I'm really excited to welcome Mike Marino to the Shared Experience Summit. We connected on LinkedIn, and I was interested in his book title, which to me just suggested that the leader would transform him or herself. The executive would need to undergo some sort of transformation, learning experience before they could expect their teams to reach new capabilities. So I'd like to start, before we talk about your book and some of your other things, if you could just give us an idea of your career path, what got you into coaching, what made you interested in the executive coach as a career.
Sure, thanks. Well, my background's kind of split between corporate experience and consulting experience. And the consulting experience actually started way back when with Ernst& Young doing typical management consulting. That led me to a corporate career of 16 years with PepsiCo through sales, finance, operations, left there as vice president of sales strategy and sales development, and then got back into consulting. And I started doing consulting, more traditional management consulting. And then I had the opportunity to join some partners in an organization that was all about organizational development. And that's where the coaching and the team development and the organizational culture development piece came to life for me. Not just that they did that as a practice and did it really well, but they did it differently. And if I could share just in a snippet
Please.
what was different about it that kind of turned the light on for me, I thought with 20 years of executive experience that I was qualified to coach other people on how to lead because I had been a leader. And what I realized when I became a partner in this new organization, two of the founders, the co-founders, came from a family counseling background. And they brought family counseling concepts around systems and the health of systems to organizational consulting in a way that I hadn't heard of or experienced before. And they also started talking about how an individual develops, what their blind spots are, how they get awareness around those blind spots. And all of a sudden, I realized very quickly that if I was going to do executive coaching and professional coaching from my own experience only, I had about a 180-degree view of being an effective coach. But all of a sudden, I learned these other aspects from the counseling side, from the psychology side, from the understanding systems side that really made it 360. So as soon as I got engaged with them for the last 15 years, that's what I've been energized about doing is helping people kind of be that 360-degree type leader that knows themselves really well and can lead very well. So that's a little bit of my background and how I got to where I'm at today.
That makes a lot of sense. And knowing yourself very well, as Socrates said, know thyself, and that's what's on the Oracle of Delphi. It seems pretty simple, knowing yourself, being yourself. I mean, you're hanging out with yourself all the time. But it's surprisingly hard. And you mentioned blind spots. How do you have particular techniques, practices? What's it like when you engage with a client in trying to get them to see their blind spots and recognize about themselves what you see?
Right. Good question. Because first and foremost, when I gauge someone, if they're going to go down that path, I really need to have my hands on them and be working with someone that has a true learner's mindset, that's not afraid to hear things for the first time or being told things about themselves or their behaviors. So they really have to be open, which is the first thing I look for in anyone that I want to work with. But from there, I take an approach with the folks I coach that I want feedback from as many people around them as I can get. That helps me understand what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, what their blind spots are. So I'll take that information from what I'll call kind of their stakeholders around them. And then I'll also have them do a number of assessments that people are probably familiar with around their strengths, their personality styles, that type of thing, their behaviors. And then those really become the inputs to the conversation. And I love people who take advantage when I say, I want to talk to all the people around you. The folks I coach that say, talk with my ex-business partners where we had a falling out, talk with my wife, talk with my ex-wife, talk with my executive assistant, talk with my twin brother. Those types of relationships can inform me more about an individual than I can get talking with them directly one-on-one. So that's how I identify, strengths and weaknesses, but where the blind spots come out, because I'll hear themes as I talk to people, and all I do is present back to my coachees or what those themes are, and I get their reactions to them, and hopefully get them to own them a little bit, and then be interested in improving from that point. So that's
Nice.
that's kind of how we typically will go about identifying the blind spots. That way, it's not me engaging the client and having conversations with them and them having to hear my perspective on what I believe their blind spots are. But these are coming from people they've surrounded themselves with for years, that they trust to speak into their lives. So it's easier for them to hear that and move forward from that perspective.
Yeah, I can see that. And so what is the title of your book and how did that come about?
Yeah, transform yourself, transform your organization. Subtitle is Why Leaders Always Go First. A couple of things there. One is I use the word transformation very specifically because the type of work I do, I'm looking for making significant, long-lasting change in people and in organizations. I'm not interested in making slight temporary changes for folks. So that's why the word transformation pops out on the book twice. Why leaders go first? For me, I fundamentally believe in my heart of hearts that all leaders want to see their organizations at their best. They want to see their teams at their best, and they want to see the overall organization at their best. And my point is to bring out the best in your teams and to bring out the best in your organizations, you have to bring out the best in yourself first. You have to be the best leader that you can be for your organization to be the best it can be. And not only that, if you expect your organization to go through learning and change and transformation themselves, to see you model that and demonstrate that first is critical for a leader. So I think a lot of times people read see the cover of my book and say leaders go first. I thought, Simon Sinek always said, leaders eat last. Why are you saying leaders go first? It's a little different approach. I'm not talking about the benefits. Therefore, a leader should be last in line. Here I'm talking about change. And who better to change and transform first than the leader? At the end of
Mhm.
the day, our organizations, they're reflections of our leaders. And as the leaders grow and change and develop and transform, then the organizations can. So that's the essence of the book.
Mhm. I can see that. And do you have is the book more prescriptive? So do you have exercises? Are there specific methodologies that you work with people on?
It is fairly directive and somewhat prescriptive. There are examples and exercises because I take a leader through a three-step journey. The first section of the book is about you as the leader. How do I become what I call a well-defined leader, which is someone who understands their purpose in life and how they apply that to their work life and what their individual principles are, how they're going to live those out in their work as a leader. So I focus on being a well-defined leader, a non-anxious leader, a self-aware leader, and a leader who's trustworthy. So I go through chapters on each of those elements up front, and that's all about doing the work to understand yourself better so you can be a better leader. And from there, we transition in the second section of the book or chapters around then how as a leader do you enable high performance or high functioning teams? And there's very specific steps and approaches about that. And then the third section of the book speaks to then how do you bring about a thriving organizational culture as a leader? What is your role in developing and sustaining a thriving culture in an organization? But it goes kind of logically and linear in that fashion. Define yourself as a leader, be healthy and be thriving as a leader. Your immediate circle, your direct team, get that healthy, get that thriving, and then focus on the health and the culture across the organization. And again, there's exercises and there's methods and approaches described in each of the sections that hopefully a leader could read that book and honestly, be a DIY, do it yourself and make changes in yourself and your team and your organization. If I can help in addition to the book, would love to, but if the book stands on its own and can help, I'm grateful.
Cool. Cool. So it's been 15 years since you were in a big company. Um, are you finding that cultures really have changed, and how much is um I mean 15 years ago it didn't seem like it was part of big business to for almost everybody to have an executive coach and for it to be part of the business setting. How has that changed in the last 15 years?
Yeah, I think it has changed. And again, I'll steal a sentence from the book in that, organizations don't transform, people transform. Same type of thing, I think, around what's happened around organizational culture. People have changed. So it's not that leaders decided culture's really important, but the people coming into their organizations, the millennials, the people have different worldviews and different value sets and want to have a different experience at work and want to feel connected at work and making a difference at work. It's a change in people that change the focus on organizational culture. So the leaders and the organizations had to change to engage and have the right experience for these different people that are now in the organization. 25 years ago when I was there, it was a little different. The value sets, the world views, the expectations from my organization, the experience I was expecting working there for 15 years is quite different than today's, employee on average. So therefore, culture has become even more important. And I think, a lot of organizations saw that and addressed that sooner maybe than others. But those are the organizations that are being rewarded for it today.
Yeah. No, I can so see that. I mean, I remember um, sitting with a CEO of a big public company, and he was so proud that the word empathy was in their, in their value statement, right? And of course, it was still very old school in that, there were these lucite tombstones in the boardrooms. And to tell the truth, even though this CEO was one of the kindest, most empathetic people I had met, really generous, and you could tell with his, his generosity of spirit, and a very good CEO. But there had just been this merger, and there was the most cutthroat, competitive, um, just awful culture going around all around him. And I just I can see that what seems to me is shifting in corporate America is that the younger generation is calling bullshit on the things that the executives say about themselves and pretend are their values, and
Yep.
that's all blowing up.
Not only are they more willing to call BS, they're willing to play their card and walk away much quicker than the Gen Xers of the world, right? I mean, I think I just saw a recent study that was talking about the impact of COVID and the hybrid workforce, and if flexibility didn't remain as an element of an organization going forward, coming out of the pandemic, what would happen? And one of the things that was interesting is like, although everybody wanted flexibility, regardless of whether you were, Gen Y, millennial, Gen X, baby boomer, everybody wanted it. But the millennials, like 94% of them said, if we don't have it, I'm leaving.
Mm,
And the Gen Xers and the boomers, well, if we don't have it, a third of them might leave. So the younger generation, yeah, their expectations are different and they're willing, because they're about experiences, they're willing to drop this experience and go get another experience in a heartbeat. You just have to recognize that.
Mm. No, it's really interesting that it used to be that the term, I think it was Peter Drucker who said culture eats strategy for lunch,
True.
lunch, dinner, and breakfast. I think it was. Um,
Mhm.
and people would talk about culture, but I really agree until the millennials and now Gen Z, um, culture wasn't. I mean, you go out to Silicon Valley. I would have meetings at Google, and you know, it was like there were playpens for adults, like, so there are massage rooms and sleep pods, and it was like going to IKEA and putting my kids in the ballroom, so that they could play. um and yet people were living at work all the time, and um San Francisco got crowded. There was this buses. So I don't think people understood culture in the same way. Like, it was like, if I provide really good snacks and really good compensation, and there are volleyball courts and bikes and all that, then I've changed the culture. And what I think is actually happening underneath that, and you really saw that in um, the ethical AI people being pushed out of Google. And when Anthropology, the chain store, was exposed as really having very racist policies, I think it did, all of a sudden there was a a realization that, just like you said, the culture is the aggregation of the individuals, and it's up for a leader to actually go through that journey to find themselves, understand their values, their unique values. And then that starts to suffuse the culture, as opposed to it has something to do with environment, or it has something to do with our stated value.
Right. That's an important topic because when I talk to organizations about culture, I basically break culture into two buckets. There's two components for me. One I call purpose and one I call climate. And linking back to the Gen Z and millennials, the purpose is really important to them. And by purpose, I mean, what is the organization going to be about, and why is that important? And then from that, how do we enable each member of our team to get aligned with that purpose and feel like their contributions to it really matter? That to me, that half of culture is really, really important. And especially for the millennials that we're talking about, because at the end of the day, they want to belong, they want to contribute, they want to make a difference. And if it's not here, it's going to be someplace else. And the connection point for them is around purpose. If their purpose aligns with the organization's purpose and what they're about and why they're doing it, those are the underpinnings of a healthy, thriving culture. The other half is climate, and we can talk about ping pong tables and skate parks and all the other stuff. But the climate piece to me is more about collaboration, creativity. Could it be fun? Yes, but those are elements that make sense from a cultural standpoint, but they're kind of additive to the fact that you've got the purpose underpinnings in place first. So I think historically, as people were taking their first stab at changing culture, they were so focused on the climate piece, they completely whiffed on understanding the purpose side of the equation. And climate alone doesn't work if you don't have the purpose piece in place first.
No, I really get that. I actually took a course. I was entrepreneur in residence for this, an educational nonprofit that had a great course called The Power of Purpose. And it people really develop their individual um, there was they created this distinction between the demand generator, which is I have to do this, and if I don't do this, then this will, what's going to happen, and sort of getting yourself down into this deep hole of I have to do it, I have to do it, I have to do it because. Whereas the purpose generator, as you were in it, it actually made you lighter and lighter. I want to do this because I want to do this because, and as you went through those whys, by the end of it, you really do get to your core purpose of supporting other people, of what is nourishing for you in terms of deeper connections. And when it's something that I also wonder about with companies, because a company like Amazon can have a purpose that really is around customer satisfaction and service. And yet at the same time, they have people peeing in bottles because they don't want to aggregate enough, so there are these huge splits. And so when you talk about purpose, are you talking, again, is it back to the deep purpose of the leaders and the individuals, or are we talking about like with PepsiCo, to refresh and delight, or whatever that purpose would have been?
The two can be married, but they are different. I mean, as an individual, you can have a very specific purpose, but for your organization, again, think about organizations that are in, healthcare or pharmaceuticals, where they have the type of purpose which is to, change people's lives through, through health and nourishment, that type of thing, where an individual coming in as an employee, whether maybe they had a background that was unhealthy and they changed and they saw the impact they had, and now being part of an organization that can help people go from unhealthy to healthy really matters to them. So that's where a personal purpose and an organizational purpose can kind of come together. And when you have that power, then you have a really strong starting point for culture because people are engaged at that part. But yeah, every organization should figure out kind of what that purpose is, just like every individual should figure out what that purpose is. And I spend time working with individuals and I coach them up front as far as them being well-defined leaders on something I call their unique purpose. And I take them through a series of questions and experiences and things from their past and try to generate, what happened in their life, made them the way they are, and has formed the type of purpose that they're trying to live out. And it always somewhat amazes me, I'll work with folks that are, 50-year-old, 30 years of experience professionals, and they'll look at me and say, Mike, I've never really thought about that. And I always think, how did what was your North Star for the last, 30 years of professional life or 50 years of life that you were just, following? And what you find is that people don't have that. And that's why they go from place to place and job to job and relationship to relationship. So I really love spending time with people to help them figure out, number one, all of us have a unique purpose. That's why we're here. We're all part of one big family. We're all contributing our gifts and talents and skills that we have. But figuring out what is unique about this person right here that I can contribute in a way that the other 99% of the people can't contribute. Trying to just take the time to figure that out, because when you do, and you're living in that sweet spot, in that zone, that's where you're at your best and you're having the greatest impact on people. So I'm a big believer in purpose, both on an individual basis and on an organizational basis.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The vision I got as you were describing that really is about an alignment between the two.
Yeah.
That sweet spot is when you as an individual, what your gifts are and your passions and your purpose are really contributing to the group effort and purpose. Um, And it really isn't how it used to be where people would stay in jobs. I mean, how many years were you at PepsiCo? I'm just curious.
I was 16 years, and when I left, everybody said, "Well, I thought you were a lifer." And I'm thinking that was 16 years. That felt like a lifetime, but
Yeah, it really is different. So there is this fluidity now, and I I believe that, like I was saying, I can't even remember if it was before we were recording or after we were recording, but about HR being the new IT, and that there being this much more of an energetic flow into and out of companies where um, being hired or fired doesn't have the same elation or stigma as it used to be. And people recognize the importance of somebody's talents, abilities, and who they are for what's needed at that moment or for and some period of time. Um, are you seeing that? And there's also this other category I'm seeing more and more, which is the career coach, which rather than the executive coach is more geared towards millennials. And what is your path over time? And it used to be, like I have a very good friend. He's actually on our board of directors who was president of Miller Brewing Company. If you look at his LinkedIn, it was like starting here at Miller Brewing Company and here and here and here and here and here and here and here. And it was Miller Brewing Company through the whole thing. Another of our directors was an executive vice president at Viacom, and she was at MTV and came up through the
Mhm.
ranks. So I'm just wondering if you're also seeing the concept of an executive being different. An executive is more of there can be more flexibility and fluidity, and it isn't uh the same loyalty um or demand for loyalty to an organization.
Right. Yeah, I would say loyalty to an organization may be a thing of our generation that is long gone in today's generations. But I will say there's definitely more fluidity in the marketplace as you describe it, which can be really, really good for the individual as they're trying to find their fit in the right spot for them. Um, but it's not good for an organization because the organization is still suffering the cost of all of that change, all of those what I'll call misfits, if you will.
Mm.
So where I like to work with organizations around culture is not just defining it and saying this is what our culture is, but using it end to end, using it to identify and interview and bring in and onboard people all the way to performance management and how do you recognize top performers, whether they're aligned with your values and your principles that are part of your culture or not. Because to me, the organizations that do the best job up front, not just of being able to state or articulate what their culture is about, but to be able to identify those people that match up with it the best, those people, A, will stay longer. B, they will be more loyal. Again, not loyal to the company or not loyal to an executive, but again, they're loyal to the purpose and they're loyal because of the culture. Because people will come to a job. I mean, still today, at least half the people will take a job. I hate to say it, but because of the compensation, right?
Mhm.
The initial compensation, not so much the other aspects of it. But the people stay in the job because of the culture, right? So getting that fit right up front, where you've got people that you understand are matching with your culture, it's better for the individual because they don't have to go from experience to experience and try out everything to find their fit. And for an organization that's always trying to manage costs, you don't have the turnover expense that you're replacing that spot every 18 months because you did a poor job of finding a fit there.
Yeah.
So it is part of our culture today that people are on the move more. some of that is based on experience and people not finding exactly what they're seeking. But at the same time, I think organizations could do a better job of matching those up initially to try to mitigate some of that.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. So this is super cool. I guess kind of as a final question, what really inspired you going to I mean, when you left the Coca-Cola, sorry, Pepsi-Cola company, you could have gone um, to another consumer packaged goods company. You could have, embarked on your career that way. What was it that made you say, I want to be a coach for other executives
Right.
rather than continue on the big company career path?
Gotcha. And that's a really important question. And my answer is probably going to sound like we staged this conversation, but I'm going to tie it back to what we talked about earlier, is because when I left there, I was in pursuit of my purpose.
Mm,
I wanted a better understanding of where I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to be doing and how was I was supposed to be utilizing my gifts and experiences. So for the first time at that stage of my life, I started on the pursuit of my purpose journey. And it took me, I mean, I always tell people it's an evolution. I mean, I thought I understood my purpose 15 years ago. I thought I understood it 10 years ago, 5 years ago, but it keeps tweaking and changing a little bit. But I went on that journey, and what I came down to was my unique purpose as I understood it at that time was defined in a word. It was bridge.
mm,
And the purpose statement was that I felt like I was to be a bridge helping people get from where they are to where they want to go.
mm,
And I started thinking about, okay, if that's my purpose, how do I live that out? And not just in work. I definitely wanted to find that out from a vocational standpoint. But I always tell people, once you have that purpose understood, think about all the platforms you've been blessed with: work, family, community, volunteer, coaching your kids, whatever it is. Once you have that purpose figured out, you should be able to then understand, how do I live that out in each of these platforms that I've been given the opportunity with. So, but for me, to answer your question, the first thing was, if I believe my purpose and my calling is to be this bridge and helping people, how do I best do that? Then the organizational development and coaching and building teams and building organizational culture just made pure sense. And I immediately got engaged with folks that did that really, really well, learned a lot from them, and have been on the journey ever since.
wow. I love that image and I love that metaphor system of the bridge because um, in the journey of someone's career or their life, they come upon these obstacles, these ravines, and there you are, where okay, here's the way I can connect from this side to that side, and I can see how valuable that would be for your clients.
I definitely enjoy it. And you talked earlier a little bit about career coaching and that taking off these days. Personally, I enjoy doing career coaching for that exact reason, because I'm trying to help people navigate that path, probably the initial phase of that path, which is understanding their purpose a little bit more, so that as they're thinking about their next career move, they're doing it intentionally lined up with their purpose. Even if it's not perfectly clear, they're at least starting to think about that and trying to use that to drive where they're going, as opposed to being driven by other factors.
Mm, love it. Well, I so much appreciate you and everything you're bringing, and we've just met, but I'm gonna go find your book, and
Thank you.
once, once we launch, our platform, everyone will have a chance to meet you face to face. That's really the goal of this is, um, I I thought just a little bit about Scoby. I've had some amazing mentors in my career. I mean, really just amazing. And I had the realization at a certain point what if I had found them back when I was 25,
Hmm.
24, even 16 when I was like super confused. Um, and why shouldn't they just be out there and just be boom, So I realize that different people are going to wind up being a very different fit for other people. And so that's really the purpose of this. And that's the purpose of the summit and the pre-interviews, so that um, it's really for two sides. It's the people out there looking for someone for themselves, but it's also the very senior leaders who understand that the gift of a mentor or a coach is probably the best thing that they can do. That and I saw this when I was doing some consulting for a very, very large energy company. And I went to their corporate retreat, and I mean, they employed thousands of people, right? And who are the people who got to go to this event in Sedona, Arizona, with in a big or no, it was not Sedona, what's the Scottsdale,
Ah,
Scottsdale, Arizona, and it was really interesting because the people who were there were a lot of senior executives
sure.
and really good softball players that the senior executives wanted on the team, and the people who are really good at barbecuing for the barbecue cook-off. And I just thought, this is so old school. We really need to set things up so that every single person can participate in an executive retreat every
Hmm.
day. Have that safe place that they can go with a coach or a mentor and come back, you know, into the work environment with
Yes.
more clarity.
I love that idea, and that's why I love this concept. If people can come to Scoby and get those takeaways again in their own space, in their own pace, at their own time, to me that's fantastic. And on my side of it, again, if I'm trying to be a bridge helping people, that's why I love the idea of what you're doing with Scoby, because that's a platform where if it works out, it's a platform where I get to live my purpose exponentially. So
Exactly.
I'm looking
Yep.
forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks again, and we'll we'll see you online hopefully in just a couple weeks as soon as we get all the bugs worked out.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it, as I'm sure a lot of people are.
Thanks. Bye bye.
All right, bye now.